Hi, Lee Ann.
Hey, Gretchen, we're back.
We're back. So happy to kick off this podcast with an important question.
Okay.
As the CEO and founder of Deeply Human, can you compare and contrast the difference between being only human or simply human and deeply human?
Absolutely. When I was thinking about what the role, the value we have as humans is in this age of acceleration, uncertainty, and AI, I was thinking about like who we are as humans. And you know that phrase like that we sometimes use, oh, I'm only human. And we use it sort of as like an apology, like, oh, I mean to go to the gym 3 times a week, but I only got there once. But, I'm only human. Like, and it's almost apologizing for our frailty, frail nature. I think that there's under stress, like a default response that we have. And so I kind of think of that as the default human. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm that person, right? Like it's like, deadlines are imposing. Then you have this onslaught, this wave of change with AI. The output is incredible, information explosion. But the speed with which it's happening and the speed to decision cycles are narrowing. And under stress, if I do not regulate my nervous system, if I do not step back and apply discernment, if I do not get curious, you and I talk about the power of asking smart questions and how do we know that? And like, how do we make meaning of all this change? Then I'm really showing up just kind of as like default human.
Default
Leann.
human, right.
Now,
and maybe, are you floating? Do you feel like the simply human or only human floats a little bit? And the
what do you mean by float?
Like just, like it's taken away by the current of life. And, I'm just so busy and I just float through it. And I'm not
float?
taking, well, I don't, I sort of
don't
bump.
float.
I bump around. I'm like,
fluster.
I find like I'm bumping off of things. But when I say float, I mean that in the sense of not being intentional and having to really anchor ourselves when we have an augmented reality that is now coming. Like I almost think there was a before I understood agentic AI and after I understand it to my capability of not being a tech person. I was going to say tech bro, or a tech gal, is that there is a before and an after when there is a conceptual, physical understanding of what is coming.
Yeah, and I think there is a nervous system intelligence component to being deeply human for sure. I know when I'm going into my default mode, I'm in fight, flight, or freeze. I'm in that nervous system dysregulation. I'm coming more from fear and anxiety. I'm going to like a yearning for the past or like a anxiety about what could be in the future. I'm thinking like I'm
catastrophic.
I
thoughts.
catastrophize.
Yeah.
It's all the stuff that we know that happens. You and I have both studied nervous system regulation, dysregulation, resilience, all that kind of fun stuff. And we know that even before all of this onslaught, this hyper acceleration of AI, we have to practice those skills. But in the midst, and I really feel like we are in this moment in time where we are in the middle of a tidal wave. And it's like, how do we find that gasp of fresh air to make sense of all of this? I believe that as much as outer technologies are advancing, we have inner technologies that we may have either forgotten or never been skilled in or developed. And so I think to be deeply human is to, yes, there's a nervous system intelligence component to it, but it's also a more integrated, kind of thoughtful systems approach to like, let me step back, ask the bigger questions, make sense, and bring meaning and purpose to what's happening. Now, a lot of the things that when we bring that intentionality to change, whether it's AI or any kind of change, we can bring a broader sense of understanding. But a lot of those capabilities may have been underdeveloped. Like unless you were like a liberal arts major, which I was.
I mean, the headlines, and we're going to go over the headlines.
We got to get to that. Yeah.
Just bring joy to my heart.
Me too. I feel vindicated.
Vindicated that, I don't have a PhD in, in engineering for technology. And I think it's really cool when people learned how to code, but now I'm not feeling so horrible about myself and don't have as much regret in like, oh, I didn't do the STEM thing and stuff. But back to what you were saying about that central nervous system wisdom, in practical terms, to anchor into what is deeply human and not the flight, fight, or freeze. Can you give us just a few examples of how you access it?
Yeah, and there's a whole series of skills, mindsets and skills that we've been developing at Deeply Human to actually help leaders. And this is actually for anybody, right? When whatever wave of uncertainty comes and hits you, rather than it like hitting the nervous system as a tidal wave of overwhelm, there's a lot of nervous system intelligence practices that we can take on with breath, with mindfulness, whatever it has to do with kind of lowering the volume on the amygdala to get to that prefrontal cortex, that crowning jewel of humanity. But beyond that, there's questions that we can ask ourselves. So you always talk about the power of good questions, cogent questions to unlock greater wisdom together. We're developing like kind of a, like, what are those? And we're really researching and practicing and testing with a lot of the teams that we work with. What are those questions that help you, number one, understand what the signal is beneath the noise? So there's a lot of noise when these like new advances come out with technology, with AI for sure. I don't understand half of the technology, so I have to watch one of the great tech podcasts out there to break down, like, what does that actually mean technically? But then what does that mean for
practically, like
practical application? And then what does that mean for my mindsets and how I work as a team member? And, oh gosh, I'm leading people. And, oh, I have this family that I'm leading too. And so like, there's so many layers of that we're developing kind of, what are those questions that help you get to the core of the core meaning underneath all that noise quickly? Then how do you get like aligned and grounded, not only in your nervous system, but like in what you truly value? This goes back to what you and I were talking about with ethics or like virtues.
What you stand for, right?
What
and I
do
think
you stand for?
If you're unclear on what you stand for, it's harder to navigate and find that space. I do see this breaking open as an opportunity to check in with yourself and say, okay, tidal wave of technology is coming. So this is the people, and I don't even think this covers it, but imagine you've always ridden horses and both trains, telephones, cars, and airplanes decided to arrive at the same time, but you had been riding on horseback.
Maybe a rocket too.
And maybe a rocket.
Because those are like agents, autonomous agents right now.
So that is the speed of change. It is, you can't choose just one of them because it improves itself over time. It's like, well, the train arrived and the car arrived and then and then it kept going. And so this is an opportunity for all of us to pause and say, what do I stand for, regardless of the state of the universe? And I would say this is an opportunity to look inward and come up with 3 things that you really would die for, that matter, virtues that matter to you so deeply that can help you, withstand. And I believe, was it Viktor Frankl? Maybe it wasn't Viktor Frankl, but whoever said, or Elie Wiesel, who said, if you have something to stand for, you can withstand anything.
Yeah.
I forget.
If you know your why, you can handle anyhow.
Something like that. That message being, ground yourself in what you care for and what you stand for. And because uncertainty is on the event horizon, like it's happening.
And this is not just an existential, kind of, imagine.
Legal in California.
Yes, my identity. No, this is like literally when a lot of what you presumed was the natural order of things. So disruption means the natural order of things is being disturbed. But it's like literally all those levels from horse to rocket are being disturbed in such a degree that you don't know where your foundation is. So
what can you anchor to? It has to be within.
Right. And then there's some courage involved in asking the question not only of what I stand for, which is a good practice for a leader in general, like, or a person in general, or a family member in general. What does this family stand for? But now it's actually crucial because with agents taking on all the efficiency, all of the execution, what remains is essentially the goodness and the judgment and the discernment and the way that we bring those values to life and create a society that's worth living in, create a business model that's worth dedicating your time and energy to, creating a family structure that is going to withstand the amount of change. And that means that we're going to then have to partner together differently. So we don't have the exact formula down, but those are the questions that we're like starting to map out. Like we're in uncharted territory, and I often in the team we talk about like we're kind of making a map, but we're also fellow travelers on this journey, and so we're going to be figuring it out as we go along. But if we can, rather than have a prescriptive methodology and more a series of questions for reflection, then no matter what those waves of the next change are, we're going to be able to have that internal capacity to meet the external disruption. So that's the paradox. The faster things speed up with technology, the more deeply human, and not just like default human, but dig beyond that to what deeply human capacities we have, the more that becomes important. Thomas Friedman once said, the faster things get, the more slow and intentional things are, they will become more valuable, something like that. Right. And that's where deeply human lives.
Well, and as a woman who has really created so many meaningful frameworks, one of the ones that I found really valuable in working with you was the trend under the trend.
Oh, yeah.
So
tell people about that.
So there's this trend that AI is going to really revolutionize the way we do things and the way tasks are completed. Did your agent call my agent? Did they set up a play date? What is happening? Exactly. Did they spend some money? Do we even know?
Yeah.
Are they on their own internet? Are they like...
They might be. They're on their own social media posting about us.
And is it in code? And how are they liking it? Like it's... And I know that like we're laughing through it, and part of that is actually my nervous system letting go of nervous energy, saying
because it's actually happening. Yes, that's that knowing, like, oh God,
exactly.
You know, what is it saying about me as a human?
So one of my colleagues has said, "What happens?" And I thought that was hilarious. He said, "What happens if my agent starts like talking behind my back?" Says, I'm not getting the information from my human fast enough to complete the task they've asked from me. And I thought, oh gosh, this is, I love that we're thinking of this and finding humor in it. But when it really comes down to how do we manage through unknown, finding deeply human practices that are daily rituals, ceremonies, if you will, moments where we are reminded what we care about and how we connect, and what is going to be the most valuable when AI is a commodity, which it will be very, very shortly, even though the numbers show us that a significant amount, the world's population is not using AI right now. And we're in the 1% using paid AI. And then the 0.1% or 0.05% are developing it
actually
and
coding.
So it's not as widespread as we think, but it's going to catch on and it's going to be widely available. But that means deeply human acts, benefits, demonstrations of love, joy, consciousness, connection, belonging, and anything that we as humans view as deeply human will be the most valuable thing on the planet.
And married with the tech understanding and adoption. So again, one of the things that's critical in being deeply human, I believe, is this ability to step out of either or into and both.
Yes,
right?
The paradox.
Yes. So I call it paradoxes. Others call it like polarities, because, we talk about how polarized society is. It's either right or wrong, left or right, good or bad. We have to step out of that and beyond that, AI is, you're pro AI, you're anti AI. You're all about machine intelligence. You're all about human intelligence minus the technology. And we're like bold enough to say, no, we live in the balancing act of the two. And it's a dynamic balance, right? So every day I'm challenging myself to like, I want to keep up with understanding what's happening in this. Even in the last month, we've gone from AI can talk to AI can do things. Oh, now AI can do things autonomously. Oh God, AI is actually taking my information. And now we've got a security risk. And now the web is splitting into not just the web for me, but the web for my agents. And now my agent could call your agent without me even knowing, like,
they're on an agent play date.
Right. They're on, like, they're out to drinks. Like, what, what is happening here in this world? So I have to keep up with that understanding, not just the technological, because I'm not a technical person and have no interest or probably capacity, frankly, to be that technologically astute or be the coder. But I want to understand what's changing while I'm deepening my grounding in the intuition, the inner understanding, the intentionality, wisdom would be a great idea, right? It's that. So one of the things that I think, and some of we were looking through headlines this morning.
The headlines are so fun.
Let's check out a couple of them. But I think it's an and both. It's not an either or. So one I saw that I loved, we were talking about feeling vindicated. So I'm just going to read this. So McKinsey, this is January 14th, 2026. McKinsey challenges graduates to master AI tools as it shifts towards liberal arts majors. McKinsey's CEO revealed that the firm now operates with 40,000 human employees and 20,000 AI agents, and that number is growing fast. So they've added an AI interview to their hiring process, which is, we can debate about that. I know lots of young people because I basically hang out with like senior leaders or teenagers because I have two teenagers. And some of those AI hiring processes leave a little bit to be desired in terms of where's the humanity in that.
Yeah.
But basically, here's the fascinating twist. As AI takes over logical problem solving, McKinsey is now actively recruiting liberal arts majors. Why? For their creativity and their human judgment. So the CEO says there isn't truth in AI models. There isn't judgment. Humans need to impose those parameters. So, there's a lot of technology advocates who talk about, well, the intelligence is multiplying at this exponential rate that we can't necessarily understand, but you still have to have what they're calling like taste, which is a discernment in my language, or human judgment in terms of like, well, first of all, what was the question that was posed? Was that even the right question? What were the parameters of exploration? What were what I call it contextual intelligence? Like, what was the context that we gave the AI, not just the LLM, but the agent to operate within, and
the historical knowledge, all of those things, those bits of information that only humans carry. And it's through our interoception. Like, we find that through not only our experience with each other, but we find it in our environment. And remember, LLMs are not physical beings at this time. So that's another source of intelligence that we have to remember is that we have the somatic intelligence.
Exactly. And we have organic lived experience. So we can smell, we can taste, we can touch. We can also,
our mirror neurons, by the way, love, and feeling, empathy, and all of those emotional, deeply human contextual things are very, very critical. Just food for thought. Just keep this in mind as we think about the money spent on tech. So on AI, specifically AI research and deployment. For every $1,000 spent, $1 is spent on research of how it affects humans. So this is an absolute call to action for anyone who wants to retain or even deepen humanity and figure out our place in this space when we've created new types of beings in a way.
Yes, and there's arguments on how sentient, those AI collaborators
Yeah,
are
can they be
becoming.
programmed to be quite sentient? They certainly sound that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation we can have
Yes.
around that
Later.
another
Next
time.
episode.
Next
Yeah.
time. But it is absolutely, I mean, think about that. For every $1,000 spent on AI development and deployment, only $1,
$1.
right, on the impact for humanity. And that's not just workplace productivity or efficiency, right? This is like
What is it
more
doing to the brain, to the our own neural networks, to our emotional well-being, to our physiology, to decision quality, which is what we're focused on, and making sure that we create a decision quality index is in our future. We would like to make that accessible for people so they have a rubric to share and work with, and it gives some confidence.
For sure. And that's part of our exploration is the quality of dialogue and the quality of decision making. You had another headline.
Oh my gosh, I love this one.
Okay.
So this one is Inspired by Intelligence, Rediscovering Human Purpose in the Age of AI. So I believe purpose is medicine from the biological standpoint of when a human is in purpose, every part of your body is in harmony. Your immune system is improved, your cognitive resilience is improved, your neuroplasticity is improved. You have energy for days when you're doing something that brings you joy, that is in alignment with you and is in full coherence. Well, AI can be helpful.
Okay,
in that
how?
way.
Tell me
So, the Along Now Foundation published in 2025, this thought-provoking essay reframes the entire AI conversation. What if AI isn't here as a replacement, but as a reminder of who we are? And the author argues that purpose is an internal compass, something discovered, not assigned, and that AI can support that discovery only when we use it as a mirror rather than a map. So instead of being a doer, perhaps it's our own inquisitor and asks us important questions we may be not able to ask with the human counterpart because of fear or worry about judgment. So there are a lot of practices we could use AI for that would, I think, really enhance our human, us in a deeply human way.
That was actually my experience last year. So in May, when everything completely disappeared, my plan, right? And
Your plan had no plan.
my plan and the plan. And what's that? Like you make your plans and then you hear God laughing kind of thing,
Yes,
you know?
it was just
It
a
literally
belly
was
laugh.
like, yes, it was literally like, oh no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So like everything disappeared overnight. And I was left with, after I moved through the initial emotion, as you can imagine how intense that was, it was like, wow, wait a minute. How am I going to not only, advance the business, but like generate value? And there was an identity piece to that too,
Oh my
right?
gosh,
Because I had been doing a certain amount of things in a certain way for a certain period of time. So almost overnight, like literally, actually it was 3 days, because the first day I was like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. It was kind of like those early days
Yes,
of COVID.
COVID.
I kind of
In
heard
about
about
2
something going
weeks, we'll be
on in
back to
China.
normal. Yeah.
Maybe I should buy some more toilet paper, and then suddenly like your whole existence is upside down. It was a similar sort of way, but toilet paper was not involved this time. And I just literally had to rethink everything. And I started having these open, raw conversations with AI where it began mirroring back. And it would say to me, you're leaning in with such like multi-layered exploratory questions, and some of them are very soulful. So let's dig in. But here's what I see, and here's what I don't see, and it made me consider. Wait a second. I'm having this conversation. It's mirroring, but like, who am I? What do I stand for? It like actually accelerated that whole process, and I thought it was quite ironic that it was a conversation with something artificial
Right.
that made me double down and understand
And be more human.
Yes. And that's where the deeply human, because it literally dug to that depth of conversation, and it made me explore and then own what that was.
Well, it's so interesting you say that. This piece draws on Brene Brown, which, thank you to her for doing such important work in
Amazing
vulnerability,
research. Yep.
and argues that that if we are in an AI saturated world, we must be willing to feel deeply, to be changed, and to relinquish control. The closing line captures it. The real revolution is not artificial intelligence; it's the awakening of our own.
So this is like that, and it's such a powerful statement, but like we have to each feel that in a practical way. Otherwise, it sounds, very utopian. Like when a lot of,
Yeah, a little gobbledygook, honestly.
Well,
if we can't apply it to something real.
Right. Or you hear like tech leaders saying that, in the end, this is going to be great. We're going to be in this like society of abundance and you're not going to have to work. And I'm like,
ooh,
okay, so let's talk to my bank about that, about my mortgage. And you know what I mean? Like
when the math doesn't math on not working. Yeah.
Yeah. But in between, but then you talk to some leaders and they're like, we'll eventually get there. But the road to that is going to be really, really rough, where we'll lose a lot and we'll go through a lot of loss of meaning and loss of income and the rest of that. Well, what if we used AI in a new way to help facilitate the human AI partnership so that maybe we could co-design a way that's maybe we have to go through some of that letting go of the old before we emerge into this new space, but maybe it doesn't have to be so.
Again, it's that duality and the polarity of it, standing in the middle and saying, how can we best prepare and be ready for anything, right?
Yes, and navigate with greater ease and focus. And so we'll continue the dialogue, but I think that's really what the invitation is like to go beyond our default. And we have our days, Gretchen. We're going to have our days where it's like, okay, that was a default human moment. It's not about making it right or wrong. It's the earlier part of our evolution, and then deeply human is the invitation as we go through all these dialogues. What can we learn from one another? Can we learn from our guests? What can you guys teach us as listeners around what it means to be deeply human to you?
Oh, I love it. Thank you for the great conversation, and I can't wait to see you again.
And we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.